My name is Ian T. I'm a visual artist from Singapore. Welcome to my studio. My practice is an investigation of youth in relation to themes of vulnerability and rebellion. So the studio is a space for me to sit with my thoughts. Quite crucially, it's also a place where failure is accepted, so I can take my time to understand things as they are and also work through them. My studio mate and I moved into this space slightly more than 2 years ago. We found this space right after graduation, so actually it marked kind of an important transition moment between graduating from art school to focusing on our own art practices after graduating. And I think since having this space, I've learned to cultivate a good structured timetable, I suppose. And I think it's a way to keep me organized and also make time to be creative and free. Actually, the space we're at now is where I usually work. So it's a space that's right next to the window. There are a couple of benefits for that. So I think primarily there's sunlight and also good ventilation, which is quite important because it's a space without air conditioning. So I think the ventilation is very important, and you can kind of tell where most of the activity happened by the paint marks, whether it's paint splatters on the floor or paint drips on the wall. You can kind of get a sense of where most of the activities are happening in the space. The two works that are on view at SEA Focus Curated are from an ongoing series of work which I title Target Paintings. Across this body of work, the target is a recurring motif. So it comes in the form of the sort of silhouette targets, but also kind of target spots or concentric circles, more abstracted form of the target, as well as human scale target papers. So these are actually real firing target papers that is used for firing practice. And for me, I think this motif is a way to explore themes of difference and otherness. Yeah, so the process of creating this body of work involves building up layers of paint and collage on aluminum panels. So after the composition is being built up, the final step involves cutting into the surface to expose the aluminum base, as well as to create kind of different textures on the surface. Yeah, I think for me, this very violent gesture of cutting into the painting relates to is connected to the target in a way of how I think the gaze projects this sort of violence as well. So the way that the viewer looks at the painting, their eyes are being guided by the different compositional elements, but also the directions that the cuts that appear. So I think I like that kind of connection between the way that the viewer looks at the painting and suggestions of kind of closeness or intimacy in a way that the viewer becomes implicated in this spectacle of violence. Yeah. I've been working on these aluminum panels since during my studies in LaSalle. I think I wanted, and also creating works which involve this technique of grinding and like cutting into aluminum to create tones of light and shadow. This body of work I started working on this series after I graduated about 2 years ago, and I wanted to create a body of work where the cuts embody a different meaning. So it's not just a kind of material or formal exploration of light and shadow, but how this very visceral quality of the cuts could also be juxtaposed against different elements. So whether it's that kind of painterly element of the brush strokes, or kind of more liquid qualities of paint being poured on the surface, as well as elements that people are familiar with. So whether they are like kind of comic book strips or pieces of textiles like the bandana or reflective tape. So things that already carry meaning, but then when these combination of techniques, forms, colors, and materials come together, they suggest a different narrative. Yeah, like I mentioned before, the final stage of the work involves cutting into the painting. So this usually when I work to this point where the composition is mostly set, I would kind of work out where I want the cuts to go. It's different layers of paint and collage on the surface, and the cuts would come in as kind of the final marks to finish, to resolve the work. And the chalk just comes in for me to have some guiding lines to work with. Usually when I do the actual cutting of the work, it's done on the floor. I won't really be able to see the full work. So one benefit of using the chalk is also that it allows me to just rub off the mark without damaging the painting or affecting the painting underneath. So I could just easily wipe it away with water and refine the marks, or even change the drawing altogether. The paint I use are primarily acrylic paints, and then it's like paper or fabric, different types of collage material. Yeah, and I mean the reason why I started working exclusively with acrylic paint also is because it helps with the drying time. Yeah, just so that when I build up the surface with paper and other collage elements, using oils, the drying time can be quite tricky. Yeah, with acrylic, I know when exactly the layer was dry, and then I can continue working on the painting. The other benefit is that when I cut into the work, often there's a lot of dust and material that comes off. Using oil paints, when they're not dry, all these kind of dust would kind of get stuck on the surface. So acrylic paint ensures that I can kind of clean the work properly, and you don't have kind of the dust or different metal shards kind of getting stuck into the painted surfaces. Yeah. So there'll be two works at SEA Focus Curated. The first is titled Visibility is a Trap. The title is taken from Michel Foucault's idea of the panopticon, which is a structure of surveillance in which the individual is being subjected to constant visibility without any opportunity for retreat or privacy. And I think a new element that I've included in this series of works are reflective tapes. And I think the use of reflective tape captures this tension in a way that their luminosity signals presence, but at the same time, these tapes are being used to demarcate spaces. So in the work, you would see that two yellow reflective tapes zero in on the composition. And once the viewer's eyes are being guided to the center of the painting, they would see that a pair of eyes are looking back at them. With this work, I hope to talk about issues with regards to the politics of visibility, whose gaze individuals are being subjected to, as well as whose values govern these sort of power structures. The second work at SEA Focus Curated is titled History Keeps Me Awake at Night. The title references a work by the American artist David Wojnarowicz, and I think in a way this work can be seen as a sort of homage to his practice. In a way, this work speaks more directly to the Singapore context. It responds specifically to a series of arrests that happened in 1993 along Fort Road, in which undercover police officers infiltrated a popular cruising spot. As a result, 12 men are being arrested for alleged criminal offences. Names of these 12 individuals were published in the popular newspapers at that time, and it caused quite a media sensation. Personally, I think with respect to the Singapore context, it responds not only to this LGBTQ history of Singapore, but it also speaks to recent art history, because a work that was created by the performance artist Joseph Ng in response to this same event. So it's titled Brother Cain, and what happened as a result of that work was also a 10-year de facto ban on performance art in Singapore. So in a way, in this work, I'm trying to grapple with the spectre that's being cast by this event, the sort of unresolved loose ends, as well as the lingering kind of battles that sexual minorities have to fight. I'll be opening a new solo exhibition with Yavuz Gallery. It opens in conjunction with SEA Focus 2021. It'll be on view at Gillman Barracks from 16th of January to the 31st. For the rest of the year, I will be showing new works with Yavuz Gallery at art fairs across the world. So do keep a lookout for them.